again, Carolina.
Amazing.
Yes, thank you, Sonia, and thank you everyone again for being here. So, before we start, we already asked you, some of you already introduced themselves, but just, to see the feeling in the room, etc. We just want to know, from 1 to 10, how well are you feeling today? So I'm posting the link directly to participate, and this is gonna be, the participation throughout the entire conversation. So please, once you open it, don't close it. But in case the link is not working, you can also join via slido.com and then just add the number 1566488. And yeah. Oh, actually it says 1 to 10, but it's from 1 to 5. I don't know what happened. There was a bug, sorry. So let's give it a couple of minutes to see if we get some other responses. Because now it's very divided. Oh, okay, for overall, it's a good feeling. I'm caffeinated, so I'm feeling like a 5 already. But okay, maybe one more response so that half of the group is participating. Well, no, let's just go to the second question. And here, yeah, we just want to know where are you joining from today. And I saw someone from Belgium already, which is nice because I'm currently in Antwerp. The Netherlands, nice.
Also, if you haven't been able to access the Slido, you can just scan the QR on the screen. I think we can all see it, and it will take us to the session on Slido. So we really want to, besides hearing where you're from, where you're based at the moment, or where you're joining from, we also want to make sure that this works, because this is where we will be collecting your input, your insights. Yes.
And let us know also in the chat if you're having any trouble accessing the link, or if you are having trouble accessing the information at all, so that we can help you with that. But I think most of us are there already. I see 7 responses. So yeah. Okay, maybe we can move ahead. And also welcome all of you. Thank you for participating. So basically today, we are gonna give an overview of our online community. It is like a Civicus case, but we are also I'm getting ahead of myself already, but we brought useful tools in case you want to do something similar, to explore possibilities of opening an online community or generating these safe spaces for individuals to connect and strengthen your network. And we did this through the intersection between the human-centered design and using digital technologies and civic action, but also being very mindful of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so the session overall will cover 3 aspects. So the first one is the point of view from embedding diversity and inclusion into the heart of the program, because at Civicus, we are very mindful of diversity and inclusion and the importance and the impact this has in the way we conceive the world and engagement with our communities. The digital security part, especially because we worked with a lot of organizations that are, or movements that are in constrained civic spaces. So we need to be mindful because of the digital era of security risks. And then adding the principles of human design to start building connections. So this is just a little bit of what you're gonna see in the session today. And in any case, if you have any questions and comments while we are, giving this introduction, just send everything on the chat. And then I'll leave you with
Cool.
Caro.
Amazing, thank you. So for those of you that just joined and maybe missed a little bit or part of the intro, so my name is Carolina and I'm here with my colleague Oriana, and we work with Civicus. Civicus, I don't know if you know Civicus, but just in case you don't, it's a membership-based organization. It's a global alliance of people, institutions, civil society actors in general that come together and work to expand, promote, and defend civic freedoms, civic space, basically. So what we do is we work together and trying to identify how might we collaborate, how might we learn from each other, develop ourselves as a civil society, how do we strengthen our capacities and capabilities as civil society, and how do we lead in some of the emerging discussions that are relevant to the work that we do in terms of defending democratic freedoms, right? So Civicus has existed for around 30 years. I think we're turning 30 next year. And it's like the majority of our members or the Civicus members are based on the so-called Global South, which is actually the majority of the world. More than half of the membership are based in Africa, in African countries. And it's a very diverse alliance. We have people from basically every corner of the world. I think it's probably more than 175 different countries. And the membership numbers right now are around 13,000 members. So we have a little bit of everything. We've got grassroots working groups, we've got collectives, we've got big international NGOs, we've got faith-based organizations, individual activists, journalists, media agencies. There's a bit of everything. And as new technologies started emerging, we came to face this new challenge because historically, Civicus has operated as a convener of these different civil society actors, right? So before the pandemic started, there was already this ask from members to be able to start connecting and working with each other in a more decentralized way, because I think traditionally what has happened is that at the Secretariat, which is this coordinating part of the alliance, we tend to work in a very centralized way. We enable the connections, but it all has to go through us, right? So what we want to, because it has grown so much in the last few years, and it's been a very organic work. It's not like we're doing any special type of outreach to increase the membership. We wanted to move to this more distributed type of organization or organizing model. And of course, we also wanted to leverage the emerging digital trends, right? So the challenge that we framed after doing a lot of sensing and a lot of UX research and so on was how might we enable meaningful connections that contribute to defending democratic freedoms in the digital era. So the reason why you see this challenge framed like this, and this is maybe for you is like a very obvious and clear connection, but just in case design thinking or human-centered design is something new for you, we usually frame our challenges like this, starting with how might we. It's a very common thing to do whenever you are designing a project, an idea, whatever. So that we start thinking in terms of solutions, right? So the how might we is going to put us in a certain mindset, sorry. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in the next few minutes. So yeah, just going back to the challenge, how might we enable meaningful connections that contribute to defending democratic freedoms in the digital era? And of course, this challenge comes with many different caveats, because of course, we like to believe that the digital accessibility for many of the Civicus members is a reality, but the fact is that it isn't. And that we have like so many different sub-challenges and tiny elements that are playing a very important role and that are making this very complex. But we're going to be telling you a little bit more about this in the next hour or so. So before we get started, we wanted to kind of check what's the sort of, what is your relationship with design thinking, if you are already familiar with it, or if we should start like basically from scratch. So please go back to the Slido and share with us what comes to mind when you read the words design thinking. Amazing, no idea. Good, that's a good start.
Yes.
User-centered, good, yes. Human-centric, good, good. Seeing problem from perspective of customer user, the methods and procedures used by designer in the process of designing stuff. Cool. Just a few more seconds to see if we get any other answers. A creative approach, good, good. Needs to answer. Cool, okay. Good, these are all very, very valuable answers. And I think it kind of gives us a good kind of starting point, like a common ground, so that we know where to start with the presentation. So what is design thinking then? So like you already stated, oh, sorry, I think I accidentally muted myself. There you go. So design thinking is a process for creative problem solving that puts people at the center of the process. So yes, that's what you've already heard of, and that is what comes to mind when we say design thinking. So we put people at the center of the problem, which is super important, not only the solutions, but defining the problem. What is the actual problem? Because we usually tend to define the wrong problem. Which leads us to come up with a wrong solution, because if you don't have the right problem defined, then how are you going to start coming up with the actual final solutions, right? So this is often called the human or user-centered approach. And this is very common, this methodology or approach is very common in the tech sector, right? And I find it very interesting, and I'm very passionate about this topic, because I believe that the approach has been sort of kidnapped by the sector, by these big companies, tech giants that have like the ability to kind of take long time to sit down, define a problem, do UX research, etc., and then start ideating, prototyping, testing, etc. I think civil society, in a way, it's like an ambivalent sort of tension there. I believe that we are always, or at least in the so-called global south, we are always in survival mode. So for us, it's like we don't have the spaces or the time to sit down and do this type of processes, because it tends to be very like how do you say? Yeah, with a lot of ambiguity and vague at the beginning. And we're always like, no, we need solutions now, because, the crisis is here and this is so pressing and we need to do it now. But on the other side, I think this approach, this putting people in the center, is like inherent to civil society, especially when you are working at a grassroots level and you kind of see what are the needs of your community and etc. So there's like, it's like I said, it's like these two, there's two sides of it, but I believe it's super important that we start sort of building a new narrative and pushing for more approaches like this, so that we give civil society the opportunity to follow a process that is not rushed by, external interest or the emergency or the urgency of the issues that we're working with, and still focuses on the needs of people, the needs and the desires too. So it encourages us as NGOs or civil society movements and networks to focus on and work with the people who are affected by a problem when creating potential solutions. And it could be applied to many different things. It could be a campaign, it could be a program, it could be whatever, like, a product, like the one we're going to be sharing with you. And understanding how people are affected and what their needs are, and respecting local and indigenous knowledge can definitely lead us to better solutions instead of just, imposing external views and approaches. So why design thinking? So some of the principles of design thinking, like you already said, is that it's human-centered, that is focused on human values. So it's targeting, the minds and hearts of the people that are involved in these processes. It helps us clarify, and embrace the ambiguity. It encourages radical collaboration, creative confidence, and it embraces experimentation, which is something that as civil society we tend to do a lot, right? So yeah, I think, or we believe at Civicus and some other networks, that it could be a very powerful approach to start, focusing on tackling different issues. So now I'm going to hand over to Oriana, who's going to tell us about the diversity and inclusion principles.
Yes, perfect. Thank you, Caro. So the idea, I think my computer froze because I cannot see anything. But anyways, hopefully you can all hear me. Okay, it unfroze. Yeah. So as I said before, like the principles of D&I are embedded in all through Civicus work, and especially like in design thinking and co-design makes a lot of sense, because since we are bringing people to the center of the problem, and these people all have like different backgrounds, we acknowledge that there are like different power dynamics, and that we need to work collectively and creatively. So, we need to take in mind and understand, like diversity and inclusion, and specifically intersectionality, because this is at the heart of what, the solutions that we're going to bring about to the different problems or the different challenges. So I'm just like very briefly, I'm going to go over what we understand, what diversity is, what inclusion is, and what intersectionality is, and then just start going through the different phases of the design thinking approach, and what we did in each of the phases, so that you get, or we attempt to get, like a little bit more of an understanding of how is it that we tackled this challenge of, like not leaving anyone behind, and creating like this community building like mechanism. So basically, like diversity, we just, like we recognize that there are different people like around the world, like there are different dimensions, there are different groups, one another. And then like with inclusion is actually the action of recognition, of bringing everyone to the table, of inviting them in a proactive way. Like it is a mindful step that we are taking, to make sure that this diversity is happening in an environment that is safe for everyone. And then in terms of intersectionality, because we know like, like people are diverse, but then there is like not only one image or one thing that people represent, there are like different things that represent different people. Then that's why we bring intersectionality here, because it's also about like the power imbalances and the power dynamics. And then like obviously we cannot forget that this, like all this is not like a single picture, that this is always like evolving, like these definitions change depending on the point of view. But I'm just being like here, like very broad, so that we have like a basic understanding of the analytical tools that we use to understand or to process and tackle like this problem, and inviting people that have like multiple identities. So then yeah, so then we go to the principles of design thinking. Just, there, we started this approach. It is like a double diamond approach. So, like we start in the yellow side with the first three steps, that it's like empathy, sense making, and reframe. And then you go to the ideate, prototype, and test part of it. It's just like, for example, like we just try to explain these steps very quickly, and then give you the idea of what we did in every single one of these steps. But so, for example, in the first diamond, it's like about understanding the what of the problem, like the why, and like understanding the current situation. So in the empathy part of the problem, we want to start like problematizing, like making these like a challenge, like understanding, the background, the context, what are the dynamics that are happening in there, like if the current situation is going to persist, like what is the best way to tackle this problem. And so for us, as Caro just mentioned, it was the idea of finding a solution to create safe spaces for our community that is like all over the world, 175 or so countries, and finding the best way or the best digital solution, because this was like a digital focus, for engaging opportunities that made it safe, but also made it accessible, because a lot of our members are in like remote spaces. So yeah, we started like discussing like the relevance of creating a new solution versus adopting already existing ones, because we know like out there are a million different apps, a million different platforms, and we didn't want to make maybe one from scratch, because maybe it was like too hard to make it, or like we would lose a lot of time, a lot of money, and like what, and see, because we always say like we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So like we started like problematizing and understanding like this challenge, and then like also in terms, like Caro already mentioned it, in terms of diversity and inclusion, our community speaks a million different languages. Not all of them speak English, and even though Civicus works in three main languages, so English, French, and Spanish, we wanted to be inclusive in that sense. But then also like like some people have access to internet, some people do not have access to internet, some people feel comfortable showing having a video call, others might feel less comfortable having a video call. Sometimes it's impossible because the government is like there is repression and stuff like that. So it was always like a difficult problem, and that's why we wanted to embed diversity and inclusion in all we had, because for example, some of our members have disabilities, some of our members like it's a complex challenge in general. So that's what we were thinking about the empathy. Then in the yes,
sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to say something before we move into the specific stages, that the double diamond approach, what it helps us understand is that across this process, we're going to have converging and diverging moments. So here at the beginning of the diamond, where on the yellow part, we are converging, right? Because like this is our starting point. But then as we move forward, we're going to diverge. And then that's where the ambiguity comes in. So we're going to start blue sky thinking, and there's going to be a lot of input and etc. And then we're going to diverge again when we reframe our challenge, which will take us to diverge again, to start ideating and dreaming and etc. of possible solutions that will come to a prototype, and then we'll converge again when we have something ready to test. So I just wanted to mention this sort of converging, diverging, because it's like for some people difficult to understand that there is not like a specific outcome. So basically or expected outcome, like the principle, the basic principle of design thinking and this approach is that the strategy is to not have a strategy, not unless everyone has had a saying, on the process, everyone affected by the problem. So yeah, I just wanted to say that before we continue. Sorry, Ori, go ahead.
No, thank you. Actually, yes. Thank you for making this caveat because it's super important, and I forgot to mention that. And then something also about the principles of design thinking is that, you know, we will try to somehow give you the step by step, but this also like doesn't happen step by step. Actually, some, you know, like you can move on from stage 1 to stage 3, and then go back to stage 2, and then 5, etc. Like it's not a linear like type of solution, or it's not a linear way of tackling the problem. Yeah, so then about the sense making, it actually like converges with the empathy stage on us. And it's about like understanding, you know, like the causes and effects of the problem, of the issue that you are examining in general, of how our participants, you know, like seeing this problem and how they're analyzing and synthesizing the information or the stories, all that data that you've maybe already gathered during the empathy stage. And in here, for us, it was all about like the research. So we started doing like a lot of surveys and interviews with members in different countries to understand some of the necessities or the interest they had into, you know, possibly adopting or not this kind of platform. We had a lot of engagement with all like the Civicus networks to understand, you know, like the variety of tools that were out there, to really, you know, understand like the limitations of in terms of communication. And for example, we found out that, you know, like a lot of people were already communicating by email. Like, of course, like we all use our email, but for them, there still needed, you know, like we needed an extra step to make it feel more of a community, like a closeness. If that is a word, I don't know. I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know what's happening today with my English, and I'm like inventing words from Spanish. Uh, but yeah, what I meant to say here is just like, you know, for example, the email sometimes takes 24 hours or a couple of hours for people to respond. Like obviously when you use like WhatsApp, you get an immediate response, but we didn't want to use, you know, apps like WhatsApp because there is no security whatsoever in these types of applications, and we needed also something more institutional. So those are the types of like sense making, like problems where we start, you know, to discuss and understand to see what is the possible like best solution. And for example, some of the asks that we had from our members is that it was not only like something for them to communicate with us, but for them to communicate among themselves. Like it was more of like strengthening that network or looking for you know, possible collaboration, like regional collaborations, or even not regional collaborations, but someone that was in Bolivia that had a similar project in the Philippines could ask specific questions for like, you know, peer learning exchange and stuff like that. Those were the asks that we wanted to respond to. So those were the types of questions that we started getting, you know, and we were looking like these types of solutions. And for example, also, even though, you know, like the email exists, then a lot of members said that they wanted like a closer relationship with the Civicus Secretariat. Like they wanted to feel like it was not like, you know, like Civicus was at the top and then, you know, the member, the community were there, but it was like more of like a horizontal role that Civicus would take. And we were all in the same level, like at the same table, like at the same like discussion. So that was something that was really important for us. Then, you know, like the reframe part of it, like at this stage, we're looking, like, again, we're looking at the challenge, but after we have gathered a lot of information, we have made a lot of analyses, etc., then we just gather like insights again to update and see if what our initial thinking makes sense to what, you know, like after all the information that we've gathered. And we revise like the empathy and the sense making, and then we make sure that we're still aligned with the objectives that we initially had. had. So that this is when, you know, the UX research comes into the table that Carol also mentioned. So because like our community is very complex, like we have all sorts of organizations, also all sorts of like movements, collaborations. We have like different personas. So then we started to create 5 different personas to illustrate the context of where each type of member that we had at Civicus, either, you know, like movements, grassroots organizations, umbrella networks, you know, like formal organizations, etc., would be there. Okay, Caro is showing one of the personas that, you know, we created. And then the idea is, it was just to do like an empathy mapping exercise, where, you know, like we would find solutions for each of these personas that were mapped. And we did this ideation phase with like our Civicus staff, to start like mapping, like doing through a workshop, like, you know, also with partners and collaborators and board members in Civicus, to find like real concrete solutions, like already like this is the ideation part that starts again, so that we can try and start attempting to solve like the different needs and desires that each of these personas might be needing. Yes, so then so now we go
In the presentations. Back to this one. There you go.
So now we are on the other side of the diamond, the green part, which is like the last part of the yeah, like the last 3 parts of the design thinking process: the ideating, the prototyping, and the testing. And this is more now about like co-creating solutions. The second part of the diamond is like, yeah, basically trying to deliver like possible solutions that can bring like positive change, or, you know, what we might consider like positive change. Yeah, so in the ideating, as we said, it's just like about generating ideas. It doesn't matter how crazy they are, how like, I don't know, far-fetched, whatever, like just start saying whatever comes to your mind, pushing your creativity, pushing your boundaries, building off of others' ideas. And that is like, this should usually be done, you know, in different groups. We did separated like the workshops in different groups so that people could just like comment and start writing whatever comes to their mind. And we did the ideating and prototyping, you know, in like 2 or 3 different sessions, because then, you know, based on the best ideas that come from the ideating part, you then build like concepts, and then you start like organizing all these ideas, and then you like creating a journey or drawing like, you know, possible solutions, and then voting on them, and then going back to discussing. And for us, the solution that came, you know, the closest to responding to the needs and solution, and yeah, to the needs that we required, was building like an online platform that needed to have like 3 features. So it needed to be like very friendly and very easy to use, with like low connectivity, because sometimes a lot of our networks struggle with like data, and like, you know, they need to buy data, and that is expensive. So we needed to be aware of that. We also wanted to have like a friendly registration process and an onboarding that didn't require these people to, you know, learn something out of the blue, because then that would discourage them to adopt this type of platform. Then it also needed to have like a matchmaking functionality where members could easily reach to all other members and, you know, like speak their different languages. So like the platform needed to have like translation. It needed translation. And then it needed to be integrated with all like the existing data that Civicus was already like managing. And like, you know, the security issue was like super critical for us. Like Caro will tell you more about this security issue like in a couple of seconds. But yeah, so basically, you know, we decided, and I'm sorry, I'm taking a lot of time, so I'm gonna like hurry up. But we, after all the research that we did, we decided that we wanted to take like a blend approach. So there is actually an app that exists that we can actually like manage to meet, you know, like our demands. Like it was almost 100% customizable, and we can update all the time. And it's easy to manage, and it's, you know, it's very similar to like a Facebook workplace and stuff. So it was easy for people, like once they got the gist of it, it was easy for them to start using it. And obviously, like this process took a little while. We had a lot of, you know, like trial and error of like obviously selecting the best service producer, but then also in terms of security, what it you know, that it was like it had to be compliant with all of our needs, especially in the type of context that we work on. And then, you know, like the final stage, the testing stage, is like once we have done all this, once we had all these conversations, once we voted for the best possible solution, then we test, but we also get feedback to see if, you know, the type of solution that we are giving is actually working, or otherwise we need to go back and refine the ideas to deliver other types of solutions that, you know, better adapt. And that is actually like, this is an ongoing process. We're still doing this. Like we actually launched the app, the online platform in April last year. But all this year has been about like working around the platform, about gathering feedback with the online community, about including them in the process of like what they wanted to do with this community, you know, the rules of the game in the community, obviously based on the principles of diversity and inclusion. But yeah, it's been a process also to make it safe for them to adopt it. And we've also done like a lot of work in security checking, in implementing ideas for the online community to become like more engaging. And yeah, and we are still in the process of refining all these interactions.
Thank you, Mariel. Don't worry. Please reach out if you have any questions or would like to know more about this. Yeah. So, is it my turn? Yes. Cool. So before we go into the actual the three aspects that we wanted to highlight and to share with you, I would like to tell you a little bit more about the actual solution that we came up with. So Ori just told you a little bit about the process that we followed. This was a very long process, I have to say. The whole double diamond journey took us over a year before we actually tested our first prototype. So I think this takes us back to what I was saying earlier in terms of kind of having the privilege to enable these type of reflection spaces, because again, we're always in such a hurry to try to sort of respond to the crisis and with the urgency sense that we need to deliver, because, you know, things are happening at the moment. But, you know, being at the Secretariat, being like this sort of actor that plays an enabler role, that plays this connective role, etc. I think it was sort of our duty to leverage that privilege and enable this process, right? To facilitate this process so that we come up with something that we believe would be sustainable, we believe it would be actually responding to people's needs, etc. So it took us over a year, and like Rory was saying, we decided to follow a blend approach. And what this basically means is that we didn't build something from scratch, because we, like learning from past errors, we did find it challenging in terms of sustainability. Like when you build something from scratch, you need like a programming and developer team that is constantly looking at your solution, at your product. And we don't really have that capacity because, of course, we're not experts in in developing and programming. Of course, there are many other organizations that are out there, but we actually found this existing product that is like, it met our needs in terms of the how much we can customize it and how much it exists on itself. So there's like new releases all the time, and there's like a product team behind it, and we don't have to worry about that. We're just like constantly working together. So we are able to focus more on the content, the functionalities, and most importantly, the community building of the whole project. So the service deliver supplier that we ended up hiring is called Mango Apps, and I don't know if you've ever heard of it. And it's it's like an intranet, and we'll show you at the end what it looks like. It's like an intranet, and it comes with like the backend is, I mean, it's not that easy to use, but it's also not that difficult. So with a little bit of training, we've managed to actually admin the whole site, right? And it comes with many different features that we believe were useful for members according to the UX research. So for example, members wanted, like Rory was saying, to be able to kind of match make themselves with other members, right? So we came up with these filters that allow you to find people depending on the language they speak, the region where they're focusing on or they're based. What are their areas of interest? Are they working on, I don't know, youth, etc. Thank you, Salome, for the question. That's a great question. We'll get there in a minute. I don't know, like there were many different, not many, just a few, because we didn't want to overcomplicate it. Filters so that members can connect with each other without us facilitating that process. So we needed to have like this sort of member directory, but at the same time, we need to make sure that everyone's identity stays protected, right? That it's still secure. So there were like it was very, very, very complex to address all these things. But that's the solution that we came up with. So the buying something that is existing, that is customizable. We did run a security assessment, and we'll go into the details. The DNI aspects of it, and of course that it met like all the different needs that members stated they had. So I think, Ori, maybe you can speak a little bit about the embedding the diversity and inclusion, and then we'll take it to the next steps.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Caro. So actually, in the part of, best practices of diversity and inclusion, like we held a couple of consultations and sessions, like at the beginning of like starting to use the platform, as I mentioned earlier, with our own members to see, which practices they're already like doing themselves, and others that we suggested that we've seen are like good practices among the sector. So for example, the translation in other languages is like key for us. So we built initially the like 3 different main pages on the platform, one in English, one in Spanish, and one in French. But then we saw like this is a lot of work to produce like every single post in all the 3 languages. So because actually the app already does like direct translation. So we just like now we have changed this, and like we post in whatever language we have the information. It's mostly English, but then people like the app actually supports like I don't know how many languages, but like 100 or so. So like most of the languages,
like a lot.
yeah, most of the languages, like the main languages, so like I don't know, Hindi, Swahili, Russian, etc. Like these languages are supported, so people can actually choose the main language they want to see all the interactions in, and then just like click translate. So that is very useful. And then, for example, sometimes people are trying to send messages. So we always ask our members if they're, if it's like sensitive information, to share like trigger warning, so that we are prepared or decide if we want to see this information or we are not ready to see this information today and we'll see it tomorrow, etc. Then we are also trying in Civicus to be a little more conscious about, you know, like colleagues with disabilities or in general, like members with disabilities. So we have the enabling voice reading option, but then also we had like discussions in Civicus and then like with our members to adopt other types of inclusive practices. So for example, you know, like changes in colors or changes in font that the app supports so that it's easier to read for some people with dyslexia, and, you know, like little things here and there. We like to think that it makes the difference. And then obviously, like, you know, like nurturing trust, we have always stated in the online community that it is important to create like safer spaces and that people really feel that this is their space to share whatever they want, because it is such a complicated context. And some people, you know, like really do have it like really difficult, that we just want for these to be a space for them to share whatever they want. And so not only these, but we also created like rules of engagement in the community, and there are actual forms if people feel like some sort of harassment. And we also have like a Civicus code of conduct that will be published. It's being revised and will be published like very soon, so that everyone knows, you know, the rules of engagement and how, you know, they need to be like behave themselves. Like obviously, you know, people here are all like very conscious of everyone and the community, but like at times, you know, if there might like we don't allow like bullying and, you know, like stuff like that in our, or sexual or harassment or any kind of harassment. So if people feel like they've been disrespected, they can actually fill out the form, and then we will do like a revision of what happened, and we will, you know, like solve the problem in case that there is a problem that needs to be solved. But so far, we haven't really had any complaints whatsoever. And then of course, like, you know, like promoting a learning environment, and yeah, the disability inclusion knowledge, like I already mentioned. And so now we want to know, you know, what other like elements or what other meaningful practices have you done yourself in the organization? Or if you think, you know, like obviously this is not an exhaustive list, but maybe, you know, like this was something that you have never done or something that you do a lot and you want to share other best practices. So yeah, we just want to hear from you.
So thank you, Ori, so much. And while people share, we've got two questions from Salome. So the first question, I think we're gonna leave to the end because it speaks a lot to the community building aspect of it. And then the question that you just shared on the rules of engagement. So I personally don't feel comfortable with the framing of the rules. I'd like to call them agreements. But I mean, yeah, I agree that we need to have like this common ground where we all feel comfortable to start engaging in whatever. So what we did is we run these community guidelines sessions, and we did it together with members. It was very interesting because we used the Civicus Code of Conduct, like the pillars of the Civicus Code of Conduct as the framing, right? Like this is what we sort of aim to have. But then what does this look like in day-to-day life for you when you are engaging in an online space? And a lot of things came out of this discussion, and it was very specific to the context of these different members that engaged. So it started with, how do you see yourself? What's the role you see yourself playing in the online community? Are you more of a passive reader? Do you expect to be like accessing content and information? Or are you like more of a content creator? Do you have like this idea that you want to share, or how do you see your role? Like what do you envision it being? And based on that, what could potentially stop you from engaging? Like what would be something that you feel like, nah, I don't like this. And that's where a lot of these things came out. Like for example, like Ori was saying on the trigger warnings, that's something that actually came out of someone saying like, look, I'm used to like dealing with very sensitive content, and how do you say that in English? Can't remember the word, but like just reporting on like human rights violations or, like very sensitive stuff. And I would like to be warned that maybe something like this is going to be shared, because I sometimes don't feel ready to go through this type of information. And we haven't thought about that. So it was very, very nice that it was collectively created. And I think that also helps us with the ownership, because it's not our rules, it's the agreements that we all collectively created, right? Yeah. So any other experiences or any other inclusive practices that come to mind? Multi-stakeholder partnerships, very people-focused and bringing together different backgrounds, needs, perspectives, and knowledge. Yes, like embracing the diversity of our networks and our communities, right? And like, for example, one other thing that I really like about this process was to also go back to, or try to go back to, more traditional types of knowledge, or of creating knowledge itself. Like I think we tend to always have like this very scientific, evidence-based approach, and then sometimes, when you're doing community building, there are some other ways that we left behind, and that members helped us put again in the table. Cool. So if anyone else would like to share on this is the time, the moment, or should we move to the next one? Because I think it would be nice to have like an open discussion at the end. We have an accessibility guidance note for persons with disabilities. That's very useful. It would be also nice if we find a way to share these resources at the end. We will be sharing some of these resources with you. Yeah, I mean, we actually launched in the middle of the pandemic. So I think it was, in a way, it was a very good opportunity, because we were not allowed to meet in person, because everyone is like all across the world. And it also kind of gave us the opportunity to start engaging online in a more active way. Yeah. So we haven't, I guess the answer is there was nothing before. So we don't know what it would be like before the pandemic. Okay, cool. Let's move to the next one. So the digital security in constrained civic spaces. So as you know, as Civicus, like I said at the beginning, we are an alliance of 13,000 members, and that means all kinds of people, organizations, collectives, groups, etc. So we needed to be very, very, very mindful of how we embrace like very good practices in terms of digital security, and also make sure that we are inclusive and accessible. So it was like a massive challenge, because, like, for example, a good practice is to enable two-factor authentication whenever you access a platform or a site or whatever. But we're working with people that are not very used or accustomed to work in digital spaces. So we don't want to add like extra layers of complexity for them. We want them to engage and to feel comfortable doing this. So we went through this digital security assessment, and it was about the security of the platform itself, but also about the safety that we're trying to provide to the members that come into the online community. So one of the things that we did first was when we were still like trying to find the right solution, is we ran this the security assessment that I'm going to share with you in 1 second. And you will have access to this. And this is super, super simple. It's a list of questions that we put together and that we ask the service supplier to answer, like all the different service suppliers that we had. So here are some of the aspects that we were looking at. So what is the data that you collect about your users? Do you collect IP addresses? Do you collect a user engagement activity? Do you collect, I don't know, any type of data and metadata that we collect, the location and so on? Do you combine this data with the information users publish in their profiles, on their profiles? So it would be like, for us, it was very helpful to see the full extent of the data that was collected and how could be linked back to the user. Because what happens in traditional social media, like, I don't know, Facebook or Instagram or the whole meta universe, what they do is they use the algorithm to understand where you are, who you are. So your demographics, where your metadata, which is the IP address and some like the next layer of information, and then with your activities. So if you're sharing, like, you know what, the president or whatever, this initiative on militarizing the country or whatever, I'm against it. And then they share this with the governments, and then we're putting members at a greater risk. So we often get this question on why didn't we just create a Facebook group? Like, if people are already using Facebook, or why didn't we just created another Signal group? So it was a very complex issue to tackle, because just the fact that everyone is using it doesn't really mean that it's inclusive or that it's equitable, right? So we needed to look at because they might be sharing other stuff on their social media, but this is like this is a space that we are safeguarding as Civica. So we need to make sure that it's safe and that it's secure for activists and organizations working in constrained civic spaces to connect in there, to share whatever they want to do regarding their work. So that was a very important question for us. To how are these two sort of, or three sort of sets of data interact with each other and how they are used, most importantly. And then does the app track users across other apps and websites? Like, for example, when you are, I don't know, you go into the internet, like any browser, Google, and you are looking for, I don't know, you want to buy a mattress. And then you connect to Facebook or Instagram, and you start seeing on your in your timeline, like all these ads, right? Ads for you to buy this or that mattress or go to this or that store. So we also wanted to not have that as part of our experience for members. So another question would be, what controls does a user have about the information the app collects? Like, are they allowed to set or change the permissions? Are there encryption options for direct messaging within the network so that they can exchange safely? How many data requests have you gotten from governments about your users? So this was a super interesting one, because to be honest, like all the others, I was very clear that we needed to look at this. But this one, I have never thought about it, about the fact that, you know, a government might come to you and tell you, like, I need all this data. And then in some places, like in terms of GDPR or like any other data regulation frameworks, you have to deliver the information. Like, there's no, like, it depends on the context, right? So we needed to also be very conscious about this. And how many of these requests has the company cooperated with? Because you also, like, sometimes you have to, but then sometimes you can decide not to do it, like the whole thing with Mark Zuckerberg and Meta and all that. Have there been any security breaches of the app before, and have users been informed, and what was the protocol, and etc.? Has the app sold any data about its users to third parties? Because that's also something that happens a lot. Like, maybe you will start receiving on your social media profiles, I don't know, like bank information, or, you know, like offerings, like, do you want this or that credit card, or stuff like that for commercial purposes. Is the app only legally registered in the USA or, you know, any country? This was just an example. And are you GDPR compliant? And if there is, like, the interesting, in the European Union, we have strict rules about, yeah. So we don't have the same level of sort of, how do you say that? Like the el rigor, like the
Rigorous.
yeah, the accountability. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Ari. We don't have that, for example, in Latin America. I think we're working towards that, but there's still like a huge gap in there. so we wanted to also align to the GDPR standards, even if we're working with people from all across the world. And then the last one is super important, like the right to be forgotten. Like if I want to delete all the information that I have entered into the community, into the online community, is that possible? Like I don't want to leave a trace. I want to be forgotten from the digital universe. Is that possible? Like, can you delete my IP address, my location, my user activity, everything? So these were the questions that we asked. And of course, we got answers from different suppliers. And that's how we sort of made the decision that Mango Apps was the best option for us at the moment. Yes, and I think I'll stop there with the security, the security aspect. So back to the Slido. We would like to know if this criteria is it new for you? Do you have any other good practices that you would like to share? Have you learned something? Do you think this was useful? Like any other reactions? We'd love to hear from those. And I'm trying to present, but I can't. Give me 1 second, please. I think we have a couple comments. Yes. Yeah, so, sorry. So which of these are new for you? Are there any others that you can think of that you would like to share? Like I said, we will share all these with you. Like in case you didn't have the time to make notes or anything, like we believe that it's important that we share these good practices. And if you come up in the future with new things, because of course this is like a very, it's something that is like ongoing. So of course there will be new threats. So if you come up with new practices, new clever ways of tackling those, it would be super, super useful to do this together, you know? Cool. Okay. So I'm gonna move forward to the last one. So for me, I mean, all of them are important, but this is my personal favorite because we at first experienced a lot of resistance from a lot of people saying like, why are you actually building another space? Like, how do you overcome the yet another one, right? And of course, we didn't expect to just launch something and hope for the magic to happen by itself. Like, it doesn't work like that. You need to work towards building that level of trust and engagement and etc. And we are far from where we would like to be, but I think we are taking like, you know, steady baby steps to achieve this. So we want to share with you a tool that was very helpful for us to kind of focus on designing human connections in digital spaces, because also it was the midst of the pandemic and, you know, all engagements were happening online. So we had like Zoom meetings and people were working on like from their own desks on their own places. And there was already like this sense of disconnection. And we wanted to also, you know, it was not only just a normal scenario, we had to work towards building this human connection in the midst of the pandemic. Yes, thank you for that suggestion in terms of the additional suggestions for security. I actually will touch on that a little bit later, but we have an event coming it's the launching of a digital security training. And it would be great to also connect with people that are working in these very restricted spaces. Thanks. Okay, so yeah, I was talking about the principles to design these human connections. So I think for us, the most important one was to be very intentional. Like, yes, the space is there, so you can have like this ongoing communication between yourselves. But then, like, how do we bring people together to actually get to know each other in a different way? Like, it's our role as the sort of people coordinating or managing the online community to build this trust, this engagement. We also wanted to be very clear on what are the mechanisms to address incidents so that we prevent this from happening, but also have like a very, very clear way forward, like a protocol that can be activated, that is aligned with the Civicus institutional values, that is aligned with the code of conduct and all these things. And yeah, again, creating the safe spaces. So the tool that we wanted to share with you is this one. So this is a framework developed by an organization called Deeper, and we will share the information with you. But for me, this wheel is like, it's the principles of our community building work online. So this is really cool because at the center you have human connection. You have human connection, but then there are like all these preconditions that you need to have, right? Like these are the principles of human connection. So you need to have presence, you need to have accountability, you need to be there like in your whole self, but also you need to respect autonomy and you need to be very mindful of equality. So these 5 different aspects of this framework were very useful when we have already overcame like the security issues, that what would be the solution, but then we needed to focus on this other part of the work. So I think this is very, very useful because it comes with very practical examples. And in the link that we're going to share with you, you can actually go there, and there are like specific descriptions for each of these things, like the ones in the triangles, sort of triangles. So we have the 5 principles, but then we have like the elements for each of the principles. So for example, for the presence one, we have the senses, the acknowledgement, the fresh new interactions, and the intentionality. So sort of what we're doing here, like we want to acknowledge that this is supposed to be like an exchange between the group. So we are sharing our experience, but we also want to share from your experience. And when you ask a question or make a comment or etc., we are very mindful that we need to acknowledge that, because that's how we build a conversation. That's how you build on each other's idea. In terms of the accountability, before we had the online community, we, the membership team at Civicus, we were hiding behind an email. So no one really knew that there was Oriana or Carolina behind these communications, right? Like now, at least they can see our faces in a picture. They know a bit more about ourselves. Like in our short bios, we've shared some of it, like what are our interests, our previous experiences. They can reach out to us on the chat, and there's like this more close connection, right? And the radical transparency is like, if I choose to ignore you, then you know I'm gonna be held accountable for it. Like I can't just get away with it. And yeah, I think like, for example, in the autonomy part, you see this one that says here, shifting control. So shifting control, instead of us being in charge of the connections, like you can be in charge of the connections. You are free to come up and say, you know what, I want to start a working group on this or that. Or I want to, I don't know, come together with another member to maybe present a joint funding application. So you are in control, not us. You can, this is a space for you. You can use it as you please. And the equality, I think we've talked a lot about this already, so I'm gonna leave that there. And the whole self, yeah, I think this one is important because it speaks to the personal side of the members. Because I hate to refer to them as our members because they are not ours. They are autonomous people that sometimes are working behind organizations and institutions, but they're still people. They're still, humans, and they still have like their own, cultural backgrounds and their baggage and etc. So welcoming the non-work self. So how are you as a human? Like, what do you like? How are you feeling? How did you get here? This type of more personal approach. Yeah, and I think I'll stop there because it will be better if you just have access to this tool. So we'll show you what this looks like. People can exchange in this space in English. Yeah, it's supported in all, pretty much all languages. I mean, of course, there's not all languages. Wait, I think I missed a couple of questions. So I'm gonna stop here. And these are the different tools that we want to share with you. But before we do this, how about we show you what the community looks like, and maybe that will answer some of the questions, right? So if you give me 1 second, I'll show you what this looks like. But please continue. You can also just open up your mics and share, impressions and questions, comments, whatever you want to say. We still have like 10 minutes. Yes, to the question about translations. So, okay. This is what it looks like. And I'm gonna super quickly give you a tour. This is our homepage. And this is where we sort of put the highlights of what Civicus is doing as an alliance. So for example, we have this initiative called the Civicus Lens, which is a platform for political analysis. And then you click here and you're directed to that page. We have the Civicus Monitor, which is it's the framework that we use. This is a very cool project that I would like to invite you to get acquainted with. This is the framework we use to understand the civic space restrictions of different countries. And it's a collaborative research project. So this is informed by people and organizations that are working in these countries. And that's how we assess, like, for example, if we have people in Tanzania that have like a specific repressive measures or initiatives from the government in their country. And we understand that we also have members from Tanzania engaging with the online community. So we can have like this cross link or this link between these two types of information without putting the person at a greater risk. And we could maybe approach them and understand, like, how is this working for you? Like, do you find it safe? Do you find it secure, etc.? And yeah, in here we have the requests section. So if you want to report an incident, if you want to start a group, etc. We've also created different groups that are open or not open, depending on the purpose of the group, for the community to work on different issues or to share different types of information. I'm going to skip the newsfeed, and I want to show you the members directory, but we're recording. So maybe I'll stop sharing and show you my profile again. And I'll get to the translation piece in a minute. Okay, so this is, for example, my profile in the directory, right? So in here, of course, I've typed my name, but you can type other filters like your location, the language that you speak, your areas of work or interest, and if you're part of any network or community of practice. So each member is invited to create a profile with contact details or not. And then there's a short bio. So in here you can see, and then my additional information. So for example, if I say I speak English, Spanish, French, and Portuguese, and then I go type in the searching bar per language, who speaks Spanish, then I can connect with people that speak Spanish. And then, sorry, let me take you back to just on the translation bit. So I can't translate this because I've set mine to be in English, but let's find one that is probably in Spanish, like this one, for example. This one is in Spanish. How do I translate it? Sorry. It's just with the admin view, it's different, but here. So this one, for example. So you can see the translation, and mine is set to be in English, right? But of course, if you, I don't know, if you have Arabic and then you click on translation, and it will be automatically translated to Arabic. But what I wanted to say about this is at the beginning, it was only for posts. Like if you wanted to use it in the chat, it was not possible to use the automatic translation or the instant translation feature. But now the full platform is supporting instant translation, which is like really, really cool. And this is something that of course happened like a year and a half after we launched. And that's, I think it takes me back to the sustainability and the adaptability and the relevancy of, having a product team that is behind this, that identifies what are the challenges and the needs. And luckily we have been working very closely with the team and, sharing some of the members' most pressing challenges, like this one. They kind of prioritize the needs of different clients or customers, and then they sort of roll this out. So I also just wanted to really quickly share the groups that we have. So like I said, there are different types of groups. We have like open groups, closed groups, ones that you cannot not even see, like you have to be invited, etc. Thank you so much for joining. We will ask our colleagues from Partos to share this information with you, and just in case you want to keep in touch, it will be super useful for us to continue this conversation as well and hear if you have any experiences. Super happy to help also if there's any way in which we can help. Okay. So are there any other questions? I feel like we still have a lot to say, but this has been too much. So I think I'll stop. And Ori, I don't know if you want to add anything else.
No, but there was the question about, yeah, go ahead, Salma.
Oh, if there was another question, go ahead first.
I think it's probably the same. So please go ahead.
For me, I had maybe two questions. First is, how do you do knowledge management on such a platform? Do you still use emails with your members? So how do you decide then what you share, email, etc.? And then the second is, how do members know what information is sensitive and shouldn't be shared externally, and then the information they can share with their own networks or using their work? That's it.
Cool. So for the first question, this is not open to all members. They have to go through a verification process. And in that verification process, like we do that manually. So, I mean, it would be amazing to find a way to not do it manually, but until that possibility is not on the table, we have someone that looks at the verification. And this verification looks at whether you are who you say you are. And we try to be very careful on the questions that we are asking, etc. But we need to make sure that you are a legitimate civil society actor and not someone that could be, sharing information with external partners without consent, and etc. So with that being said, we have around 500 to 600 people that have been verified in the platform, which is, I mean, it's not bad, but it's also, we have a 13,000 pool of members. so yeah, we're far from where we would like to be, but I think this is the way to go, like just doing it progressively. We also, every now and then, like every 3 months, we go back and check like who hasn't who hasn't logged in whatever amount of time, like 1 month. Okay, let's message them or send them a reminder, ask them if like there's any particular issues that they're facing that are like impeding them for actually going into the platform, or who has actually never logged in, like they went to verification, like we created the user license, but they never logged in. So how do we follow up with these people? And then the external world, we still use, a email marketing system, which is embedded into our Dynamics CRM. And Ori was also speaking about how do we connect it, like at the beginning, how do we connect this initiative with the existing data ecosystem, right? So on email, we share less sensitive stuff. It's just for communications purposes, but it's not a multi-channel communication channel. So we use it for different purposes, like just to share information. And then if we want like deeper collaboration or an engagement, we invite them to come to this setting. And I think I forgot the second question. I'm sorry.
I think it was how members know whether the information shared is sensitive and they shouldn't share it externally, or when they can.
Yeah, so we actually invite them when we did the community guidelines. We invited them to not share anything. And they have to agree to the terms and conditions. But of course, that is very difficult to track. Like we haven't had any incidents so far, but how do you actually track that? Here, we agree not to share any content posted in the Cívicos Online community or make any screenshots outside the platform. There would be a specific group space explicitly to share content. You know, we're just trusting members and hoping for the best. But I think so far, no one has had a bad experience in terms of that. Now, I'm conscious of the time. I think it's 9:30 already. So sorry if this was a lot of information, but yeah, we tend to get very excited about it. So would anyone, I don't know, what would like to share any final comments, remarks? Cool. So we hope you find this useful, and we're gonna leave our contact details on the chat, just in case you're interested in, you know, chatting, sharing anything, if you're working on similar projects and you would like to learn more about this or have access to the tools. And also one last invitation to join as Cívicos members so that you can access the platform. When what we're trying to do next is we have the ability to create like sub-spaces inside the wider space for organizations that have their own constituents. So if you're a membership-based organizations and you have gone through all the verification process with us and etc., we could enable a smaller space for your community that won't interact with the wider Cívicos community. And we believe this is a super important step for us to take because we have invested already in the infrastructure, in the tech architecture, and etc. And this is available. And maybe instead of having other organizations or collectives or groups having to start from scratch, we can just enable this space for you and you can just focus on the content and the engagement and the sharing and the community building. So in case you're interested in doing that, please do reach out. We would love to collaborate. Cool. Ori, anything you'd like to say?
No, I think I'm good, and I'm super mindful of people's time. So thank you for coming and participating and making, you know, questions and giving us suggestions and comments. We are gonna take that into account. It was very useful.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the Partos team for having us.
Yes.
We're very glad to have you.
Thank
Have a
you.
great rest of your day.
Yes.
Have a great
Bye,
weekend
everyone.
too.
Yes.
Ciao.
Thanks so much. It's
Bye.
interesting. Thank you. Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.